The CZ, or CZ-75 Auto to give it its full name, is a weapon in Counter-Strike Global Offensive which has been totally taken by professional level players beyond the realm of what it was intended for as a gun, and it is having an effect on the game that's actually corroding the competitive integrity of the game, and it's way too much skewing the effect that certain players have and spoiling kind of the cohesive team elements that actually are the principles that underlie Counter-Strike itself. And so I'm going to talk now exactly about breaking down some of these qualities. So first of all, let's think about what the weapon's position or place was supposed to be within the game. Now listen, I will just put this caveat in. The way someone designs something to work in a game, it does not hold as some rule, like it has to fulfill that role and it has to be that way. Actually, one of the best things about esports games is that a designer might come up with something and think this is how it will be used, but you give it to one of the best players in the world, they might use it in a totally different way. But the key question is about balance. It has to be balanced in a way where power, utility, impact on the game, these factors have to be balanced against how hard is it to use, how often can it be used, who can use it and get those effects. If those qualities are too skewed towards it's very easy to use, makes people way too effective, very cheap, you can have it all the time, then you can see where you're going to run into problems immediately. So when this gun was brought out, the inventory description, I'll read it out for you, I wrote it down for a second. The inventory description says, a fully automatic variant of the CZ-75, the CZ-75 Auto is another inexpensive choice against armored opponents. But with very little ammo provided, strong trigger discipline is required. Now immediately, there's the problem right there. Because within that description, that is not accurate. For bad players, you're absolutely right. They do need strong trigger discipline because most of them don't properly aim before they shoot, all these sorts of things. So they're going to use up the first clip and then they're going to be reloading, they're going to get killed by all that, and they've spent their money. And no, I could totally get how that would work for the people who are just bad players at the low level of matchmaking or public service. But with top professionals, that's the thing. This is not an issue. It's not the case that people have to use the CZ and be very careful with the bullets and hit one or two bullets. Did I go for near the head there? They're just spamming completely. So that's not the case whatsoever. Secondly, it's way too powerful as a pistol. Just look at the base stats for it. A CZ, even if the opponent has armor, so he's on a full buy, weapon, armor, head armor, helmet, a headshot from a CZ-75 will do 107 or at least over 100, so a headshot, a kill, with even if he has head armor. Now let me just put that in context for you. The Colt Carbine, the best CT rifle that everyone used in Counter-Strike 1.6, did something like 85 or 89 to an armored head. A headshot wasn't enough to kill. You headshot and then you sprayed into the body. This weapon is more powerful than the best CT rifle that we used to use in 1.6. Now listen, it's also true in 1.6 with the Deagle, which could headshot in one bullet as well. But they purposely made that so it actually was along these lines. Like, if you spammed it, it wasn't going to be effective to get a headshot. You had to aim one at a time. It only had 7 bullets. The reload was worse. Like, the really bad recoil that you actually couldn't aim that well. So that actually did even some of it out there. And crucially, it was a lot more expensive than this weapon here. They list in the official thing as well, every single Wikipedia entry I've found for it lists that weakness is reload time. You know, like it takes a longer time to reload. Again, here's a problem. That's not an issue. Pro players are getting the kill on the first clip in the first set of bullets. And if they don't, because they're pro players and because the scenario they're using the weapon in is against other pro players who have rifles, they're going to die anyway if their first clip goes. So that is irrelevant. That can't be listed as a weakness. That reload time does not balance the weapon's strength at all, because the player is 99% of the time never getting to use that. It's like with the Deagle. Once you use that first 7 bullets, if you were on a Deagle eco buy and they had a full gun, if you miss those 7, odds are you're never getting to the other 7 bullets. It doesn't matter at that point. Now then, let's ask what the problems with the weapon are. Nobody is fucking ecoing anymore. They only really eco now if they know money-wise that they won't have money for a proper buy in the next 2 rounds or in the next round or so. It's only if it's really going to cost them the flashes and smokes, which you definitely need on T-side, for example, or they're not going to be able to get any kits. It's only in this sort of scenario that people do the full standard eco. Instead, it was already one thing in CS that people used to gamble for a full team buy of pistols with armor, etc. If they had a strategy, that's one thing. That's absolutely fine. That is balanced because it has a concept and intention behind it that only works actually if you have the team process working behind it. Those you will still get wrecked by rifles. It was also the case that people used to buy pistols all the time because they were quite cheap. A lot of the pistols were only $300, including the CZ back in the day. So again, it made sense to buy actually on these because $300 wasn't that much, as long as you still were going to have the rifle and body armor anyway. The problem now is that it has become routine that a team wins the pistol round, then goes to the next one. Usually you don't want to just buy all AKs or whatever on that round, or all coats, because in that sort of scenario, first of all, money-wise, you might not be able to get everything you want. Secondly, you don't want to do that and then lose them. And then this plays into this as well. Sometimes you want like this SMGs. The SMGs are supposed to have a role in the game. Right now, there's almost no point having an SMG. Actually, what's funny is if you're the CT sometimes, you'd be better off buying the CZ, gambling that you just get some kills or whatever, and plus you're only going to drop a CZ, as opposed to getting that and then getting killed by a CZ immediately. And you bought armor and you've actually spent a massive buy. He only bought CZ, kills you, there we go, boom. This is the problem. It's becoming way too routine for a team to win a pistol and then actually lose the second one. We're talking about the highest level of play here, the best players, because the best players can make things that are already overpowered super imbalanced. And that's what we've seen. I've even had pro players tell me that they think that casters shouldn't overemphasize anymore the concept of saving guns. Like, I'm going to save these two weapons here. Because they say if you can buy a CZ next, especially a CZ armor, then a lot of the time, actually, it doesn't matter if you lose that weapon. You might actually be better off going for the kill here and just getting an exit kill, or gambling that you can take their gun. Because if you don't, you get a CZ, you play the round around what you're going to do with the CZ. And so certain maps, you can definitely get close range. You can get into the range you want to be. You can bomb rush someone. You can get multiple people onto one person. So you can almost guaranteed to get a gun back. That's a real big problem when it's guaranteed. These things need to be a gamble, as I'm going to go into. The problem here is it encourages gambling way too much because of these factors I say here. Except it's not gambling. That's why it's encouraged, essentially. Now, gambling actually is the other way around. Gambling now would be to do a lot of full saves, because when you do these full saves, you're almost definitely going to lose that round. You have a very, very low chance of losing that round. And then you go into the next gun round. Now it's just even again. Now you might lose that. So actually, they've introduced an element now where with how many skilled aimers there are in all these top teams, and how good the teams are, basic things like getting into position and just getting a close range to use a weapon like this and having strats designed around that, it basically means, unfortunately, that it's not as much of a gamble. And so you're seeing it all the time now. The amount of CZ purchases you get is way out of control. There's no proper proportion anymore in the economy and how you buy. Like, there's not the same rationale and logic behind it which made sense in other versions of the game. I'll have to come from 1.6 because that's my background. So in 1.6, you had basically 3 ways of approaching a save round, okay? So just to define it, we're going to say a save round is when the whole team can't afford to buy a main rifle, an AK or a Colt or op, and armor. Forget about the nades and the diffuse kit for the moment. But that's that. Anytime you can't do that, even 1 or 2, then you're in a scenario where, okay, now it's a possibility to save, or maybe we've got save options. So here are the 3 options that should exist, okay? There's a pistol buy, where you're not fully saving, you're going for some sort of pistol buy, but in 1.6, this would be Desert Eagle, okay? You would buy the Desert Eagle, and the aim here is going to be, we're either going to hold off, maybe like mid-range, and just get a pick, and if we kill someone, get his gun, then work with that, or we're going to rush one position and definitely kill that guy, because we've got 5 pistols firing on Tim. But these rounds, these Desert Eagle rounds, unless you had really amazing Desert Eagle players, and even then, your odds actually weren't very good at winning them. They were a big gamble. And you used to see it. It used to be a lot of the Eastern European teams, like the teams from Ukraine and Russia, and some of the Polish teams used to do this. But in all honesty, unless you had godlike players, it really wasn't. It wasn't at all, to use a poker term, a plus EV play. It wasn't your expected value was not good for making this play. It would actually punish you in the long run. People used to do it strictly to gamble, like, well, I want to get this round to just turn the game around and get back in it and break them completely, and this sort of thing. Okay, so it's almost a head game involved in it. But actually, the best teams in the world in 1.6 didn't do those buys. The Swedish teams did not do the Old Eagle buy. They very rarely did. The best Swedish teams, the most consistent ones, the Swedish, the Danish, these teams didn't. They did normal, full Glock ecos, and then they did on CT side, they did full USP ecos, and they just worked around what they had with no weapons, tried to get something working, probably wouldn't, but you'd full save, you'd go to the weapon round, and the idea was, if you're the best team, you win on the weapon rounds. That's where you win with executions and setups, so you don't have to gamble on these other rounds to do that. The second option you always have is the force buy. So even though you're saving, you're actually saying, fuck it, even though I can't buy it or what I want, I'm going to buy as much as I can and just gamble with that. Now that exists in CSGO. The problem with that as well is even that's been eroded. That had its own role, okay, that you've got a better chance of winning the round, but the gamble is greater on the economy. If you do that and then you fuck up and you lose, now you're in an even worse situation next round. Now you're ultra fucked and now they're way ahead of you. So you gambling, you were literally gambling this round to the next in terms of like the success of like, well, if I'm going to throw this away to potentially get the next 1 or 2 back quicker than I should, because I'm not just going to be losing this round, then going to the next, then buying and then having to win from there. The gamble made sense there, and that was where, even then, you wouldn't do it all the time, obviously, because the gamble was big. But the payoff made sense. The gamble was big, but the reward was big. Risk-reward was in proportion, roughly. But the risk was still high enough. Let me think of the way that is. Yeah, the risk was still higher than the reward, roughly, as in you shouldn't do it every time. So you didn't. You had to figure out when to do it, and you had to only do it in situations where maybe it was a desperation game, you weren't winning many gun rounds, you had to do something to change it. You wouldn't do it all the time. Now that almost doesn't exist in CSGO. People don't really do it. They do it on, here's the thing, don't get me wrong, they do it on CT side. Because on CT side, you don't always get to dictate the range that something takes place on some of these maps. You sometimes have to hold a spot, and if they go to the other site, you're fucked. You can't retake, your guns are dead in that site, you can't get them. It's not the same as T-side, where if a gun gets dropped on you from a guy from yours, you can pick that up. You can always make force buys. This is a principle of CS that comes from 1.6. You can always make force buys work better on the T side because you can specifically get the guns to the people you want, and then you can be in position to get those guns back, and then they can kill people and you can get guns off them. And there was a lot more opportunity to turn force buys into essentially what were like full buys, where everyone in the round was using a gun and was having full effect, that don't exist quite as much in CS GO because of this pistol, the CZ75. You just see people go CZ75 way too often now, more than just go with the rifle, no armor, or armor, just nades or something. You don't really see those buys. And here's the thing, the third option is the full save. Like I said, I just described there, the best teams in 1.6 used to do the full save quite often. Almost no one does it in CSGO now. Only if you're in absolute dire straits would you even consider it, especially because if you have super sick aimers, the CZ's good enough where even 1 or 2, it's probably worth gambling at the moment. And this is a problem. I've even had, like I said, pro players tell me, like, well, why save? I wouldn't do it. Like, top level players, not idiots either, not people who just don't understand the strategic life, people who actually get keyed into how the economy works. Secondly, I've even had people tell me, here's the problem. You need the gun, if it's going to be this powerful and this easy to purchase, to be really hard to use. That's one of the ways you can balance things. I'm totally in favor of very powerful things that are awesome and can have a huge impact. The AWP's a good example. But like the AWP, they have to be really difficult to use. There has to be a lot of gamble, there has to be a lot of cost involved if you lose it, if you don't get kills, if you get killed. If you get stuck, like in the AWP, you become immobile, you're stuck in position, you're having to hold certain angles, you can't be as versatile, harder to win 1v2s and retake. There are things in place around a weapon that's very powerful, like the AWP, that are obvious downsides over something else. So it has an upside over something like a rifle, but it has other downsides that the rifle doesn't, that balance it out, and as a result it becomes balanced, and it only becomes imbalanced. Here's the crucial thing. When the best player uses it. When Kenny S uses the AWP, it seems overpowered because he can overcome all those problems, and maybe he's even amazing at being mobile, and he's amazing at actually taking weird angles he shouldn't be able to, but that's not the normal person. That's just because Kenny S is amazing. That's what we want. We want these weapons to be vehicles for the skill of the player. We don't want it to be that the weapon is so good that even lesser players are godlike when they use it, just because the weapon is so good. And that's a problem with the CZ. You're getting players who aren't even amazing pistol players or amazing players using the CZ and consistently getting big kills and fucking up a guy who has a rifle who's one of the best riflers in the world just because they got him into position or they got behind a smoke or just things that shouldn't be affecting the game that much. I've even had players tell me that when they use this gun, you don't even have to aim for the head. So I told you it does like 100 plus damage to an armored head. They told me if you get close range enough, some of them, like if they're running around short A on catwalk on Dust 2, if they run around that corner, they told me sometimes you don't even aim for the head, which is what you should have to do with a weapon like the Deagle in 1.6. A pistol that can do that much damage. Instead, what you do is you just aim at like sort of the chest, like the waist area. And then the concept is, because you're essentially pre-firing with this gun, because of how fast it fires, sort of the spray of how it fires and the damage it does, because if the other guy shoots the rifle, you might be dead. So instead, you're just going to literally run around, sort of pre-fire the corner, as you pre-fire, you're going to aim at that area, because if he's crouching, bang, headshot instantly. If not, you're doing tons of damage into him, and it's going to sort of wildly go off, and you're probably going to get a kill, and you potentially can get a headshot as well off that. And so this scenario, you don't want the best players in the world telling you, yeah, well, I use that gun all the time. Why would I save? We don't eco. I just run down the corner and fire it and spam it. I just try to get close range and just sort of like shoot wherever. And then I'm shooting just like gambling to get a headshot or in the chest or whatever. And then, oh yeah, by the way, I don't even have to aim for the head, and I still get kills quite often. That's actually the way I should use the gun. Like, the player himself essentially there is telling you this gun's fucking overpowered. It doesn't make sense from a skill perspective, which is what the player should be thinking. He should be gauging whether he uses a gun or how he uses a gun based on his skill. And what the skill requirement of the gun is, to know, is it actually cost efficient to use it now? Will this help within the team concept? These aren't even factors at the moment with this EZ, and that's a big problem, you have to say. And so here's another key issue with this weapon, okay? Actually, let me just say a point. So just to add on to that, because I've just thought of something actually. One of a key concept that I've noticed in games in general. So there will always be balance whining about the strength of a gun or some mechanic of a game. In all games, you'll see it. StarCraft 2, League of Legends, Dota 2, CS now. But a key concept I've noticed that does seem to hold is that something is only truly insanely overpowered when almost every pro-level player agrees. Now in StarCraft, you will get a case where something's slightly overpowered, but really it's not just that it's overpowered, it's that at the moment the people using it have got a way to use it that no one's figured out a counter to. And so really, once the counter comes in, it'll become less overpowered. And actually, one day, sometimes it becomes entirely unused whatsoever. So you don't want to just rush in and nerf it there when only a few of them are complaining and some of them aren't. Because then, when the counter comes in, you might nerf the main thing, and now the counter becomes too OP, or now this becomes totally unviable, you can't use it whatsoever. You want to give it a little bit of time to balance out. In CS, it's not the case that this is the way. Every pro player I talk to tells me this shit is overpowered. Even, here's the crucial thing that it doesn't happen in those games. The people in those games who use the overpowered thing, they're the ones who are always trying to figure out a way, like, no, it isn't overpowered, you just haven't figured out the counter, or, oh no, you just do this, and then they list something that's ridiculous and doesn't work very often. That doesn't happen. Even the players I know who are the best with the CZ, so think of the first 2 or 3 names that come to your mind, like the best CZ players in the world. Because if you're thinking the way I am of who they are, I'm not going to list them because I don't want to, but those players I've talked to and said, come on man, what do you think of the CZ privately? And then they'll say, no, it is overpowered, like that, it's too good, like I use it myself and I think to myself, like, what a joke, like I can just use it in have such an insane impact, and yeah, I do think it should be nerfed and everything. If even the best players and the players benefiting the most are saying that, you've got a problem there. Now then, let's go on to some other issues here. So it doesn't fit the utility of what it's designed for. The weaknesses don't exist within the context of how they're supposed to balance it out. It's fucking up the economy massively, and CS is supposed to be an economic game. In CS, you're supposed to win when you have less weapons. The way to win is to outposition the enemy and to have specific strategies that go into it. Now, just picking a map on one corner of a map where you can always get close range is not a strategy. Anyone can do that. Strategies involve like creation of an idea, innovation of something new, teamwork. This guy has to come in at the same time as this one, or this one has to come in slightly delayed afterwards for this effect to work. Synchronization between people, synergy between people. They play off each other, and even with the thing that we didn't plan, I see you do this, and now I understand that if I do this, it'll help us out, and I know what kind of player you are and what you'll do next. All these factors are getting taken out by the CZ, because you don't just buy the fucking gun, run to that one spot, bum rush that guy at the car. Do we get a kill? Cool, get the gun, pull back. Now we got a gun. Now we got a gun in the CZ. Go in here in the house on in front of boom. Do you get a kill? I go back. This is actually taking the strategy out of the game. This is taking the team play out of the game. This is taking the coordination, the synchronization, the innovation, the creation. It's taking all these factors out or lessening them. I won't say taking it out. That's a bit ridiculous. But it's lessening the impact. And these are the best things about CSGO, because then it's not just about, do you have the godlike aimer, and does he happen to get lucky with a headshot or anything? None of those factors. It's about the team and how it plays. That's what we want when we watch this game. Here's the problem. We'll go to the most overpowered end of the CZ. Because here's the thing. I've described it so far as though it's a gun you only buy when you're on eco rounds, right? And if it was only that, it'd have its own problem that's fucking up the economy. The real problem is that people fucking buy it when they've already got a real rifle. That's where you got a real problem. 2 things you've seen, and you've definitely seen this if you've been watching pro-level CSGO. The player who has a Colt or an AK, but he wants to check a particular corner, and he switches from that rifle, which should be your main rifle that you have at all times when you're one of those CTOT, to the CZ to check a quick corner. So if someone was there, you just quickly spam the CZ and then he can pull back. Anytime a pistol's being used over a rifle, in that sort of a scenario, there's something wrong with the game. That did not exist in 1.6. You would never switch to a deagle to check a corner or do something like that. Ever. Because it could never be as good as a rifle would in that scenario. You would never do it. And so that in itself is a hint that there's something wrong here. Worse, though, is the AWPer. This is the biggest problem with the CZ. It isn't even the economical aspect, which I would argue against anyway, and is ruining the game. It has made these certain AWPers overpowered as fuck. Because, yes, if you played versus Kenny S, even without the CZ, he was overpowered. You get close range, he seems to just kill you anyway. He can peek corners that a rifler should only be peeking. He can take every battle. He can go any sort of range. That's because Kenny S is overpowered, not because the AWP is overpowered. Now, the thing with the AWP is, the principle behind defeating an AWP, there's always been two direct ways you do it. One, have a better AWPer and out-AWP him. That's actually very difficult to do versus the best AWPers. So what's option number 2? Close the distance. Everyone should know this. I'm sure everyone does who's played matchmaking. The way you beat an AWPer is you close the distance. It's a lot harder to do no-scopes in CSGO. Sometimes almost impossible, it feels. It's a lot harder to scope and rescope. It's not, the scope isn't as clean, the mechanic around it. If you get in close, you can get multiple people onto the AWPer, so you can only fire one bullet at a time. You're going to get him eventually, it feels like. These are all the ways you do it. Now, here's the problem. Now, this AWPer, who has his AWP and he has his armor, and remember, in CSGO even, you get less money for an AWP kill, so actually it should be harder to use the AWP effectively in a team setting. Here's the problem. We bomb rush him, we get in, we've closed the distance, great, that's what we're supposed to do. Correct, you've done the right thing. Here's your problem. He bought CZ for $500. So now when you've closed the distance, he switches out from the AWP, comes to the CZ, and remember what I said before, to a degree you don't even have to aim, you just sort of spray it, and here's what's even worse, it sort of is quite good while moving, so you can spray, back off while moving, spray it, and now he's actually in the best range for the CZ. The range that is the worst for the AWP is the best for the CZ. It perfectly covers the weakness of the AWP, and you rush in on him, and now he kills you because he's got the CZ, and you're still trying to control an AK or control a Colt, and stop and fire, and you can see the nightmarish scenario this is presenting here for riflers. And here's the problem, it's bad enough that it would do that to some AWPers. Let's pick 2 examples. So one of the best AWPers in the world is JW from Fnatic. His style is extremely aggressive peak AWPing. And it'll be different positions each time, and he'll just pop up on the map, start killing people. Now, if he does that, you're going to try and rush him, and you're try and get down on his position. But if you do that, he's one of the best players in the world skill-wise. So when he then switches to that CZ, it's fucking over. You're going to see, look how many highlight clips there are. It's like you can't do shit against the guy. But here's the thing. It's okay. There's a degree to which I can forgive that in a way, because JW's overpowered like Kenny S in terms of skill. The problem is, it rewards his gambling style too much. Now you can't punish JW's gambling style. His style should be good. It should be like an 8 out of 10 level effectiveness, but there should be gamble involved in it because he's going to random spots, and because he's pushing out as a CT, and because he's going too harm as a terrorist on his own without cover. The way you punish these is supposed to be that if he misses his shot, now he's got people on him. If he goes up and pushes into an area as CT, the terrorists are already waiting there, set up on their base that they're about to execute the strategy. 2 of them are waiting on the corner, they kill him because he doesn't see them, or he doesn't spot them right, or he misses the shot. That doesn't happen though in a lot of these scenarios. Now he's pulling back with the CZ, killing them. He's just there. He's pulling back there, rushing him up the stairs. Think about it on Inferno. He's just killing them with the CZ. He's killing them close range with the AWP. This is, the CZ's making him too overpowered. But it's bad enough there. Like I said, JW's a very good player. The player that really makes this gun clearly overpowered is Smiths from LDLC. In Titan, Smiths was never even one of the top 3 players in the 5-man lineups they had. In LDLC, Smiths, by all rights, I'm not even exaggerating here, should be the worst player on their team. You got a team that has Shocks on it. Amazing, one of the best players ever. You got a team that has Happy on, who's been really carrying the last few tournaments when they've performed poorly. NBK's a legendary, versatile player with incredible mindset. Kiyoshima's a very high-skilled but kind of a bit inconsistent player. Smiths is supposed to be the guy who sort of plays a support-ish role, but then has kind of a wild style where he'll be a bit aggressive, and he just contributes the odd game that's good. But the problem is, Smith's has just become JW Junior. He's not quite at the level of JW. He can't quite do that. But the CZ is covering all his weaknesses in that same fashion. Smith's now on CT side of Inferno will just Randy push in the house, push up, and then if you come for him, in this particular scenario, because he's not even as good as Orpa as JW and Kenny S, because he's not even as good a player skill-wise and in terms of just effect on the game as these players, you rush him, you should definitely be able to get kills on him. You should be able to punish him. Should be able to make him stop doing that and force him back, and when he's having bad games, make him have no impact. Instead, when he switches to that CZ when you bomb rush him, he's getting kills way too often. He is overpowered as fuck because of this gun. And so you're just giving too much advantage to a certain style of play even here that is becoming way too overpowered, and it doesn't have a set counter to it. There is no counter. The counter is he has to miss the CZ bullets. That's about it. You're just praying he misses. There isn't really any solid counter to this. I don't see how one's going to develop. Partly because the gun's too cheap, too effective. No one's saving now. You see all these factors. So here's the thing. What are the solutions? Because I don't like to just present a problem and be like, well, there's the problem. It's all fucked. You deal with it. Like, no, there's solutions. I've got a whole bunch of solutions. Some of them are ones that people would suggest, and I'm going to evaluate each as to how realistic is it to happen and how viable would it be. The first one, let's start in Thorin hardcore world where anything's possible. Option number 1, remove the CZ75 auto entirely from the game. This would be my option. Here's why. If you remove that gun, there are still other pistols that fulfill the role that pistols should have within the economic system I told you of buying, force buying, saving. That involves skill. You have to properly try and headshot. You have to properly use it like a skill weapon. You have to get a certain range, but it's not automatic that you get the kill when you're in that range. It becomes a skill factor with those other weapons, and then it properly plays its role. To me, if you just remove it, those guns will take up some of its role, but people won't use the force pistol buy as much. And so as a result, a lot of these issues will immediately go away. Here's the problem. I would bet money that will never happen, because unfortunately we've now got a side factor. A byproduct of CS's success is the skin success. Now, I don't see Valve removing a gun that has skins for it and that people are using all the time, that people maybe even bought skins for, put fucking stickers on and all that bullshit. They're not going to do that for this gun. They're going to keep the gun existing somehow. So I don't think that's an option, really. It's my option, but they wouldn't do it, okay. So let's keep going down the list. What are the other options? Make it more expensive. This would be my second favourite option. The gun's already got all those problems, but a crucial way to balance the game in CS actually is the cost of a weapon, because the economic component at the pro level should be everything to the top teams. The in-game leader should be keeping a track and understanding based on what he wants to accomplish and what he can accomplish and what he needs to accomplish, how we're going to buy. Here's the problem. Think about how insane this is. The CZ's overpowered now at $500. This shit used to cost $300. That's so fucking insane. If they'd have kept it at $300, the game would be ruined completely. It would be terrible. Remember when it got put up $200 and people said naively, probably won't be viable now. You won't see it bought that often. But why do you see it bought often? Even though it costs $200 more to your economy per person, why is it bought more often? Because I told you, too easy to use, too powerful, too obvious the scenarios that you can use and get kills in. No real counters to it still. Makes certain style of players super OP where they're almost guaranteed to get kills, protect themselves, have insurance. I made the joke, I'll say it here actually, I made the joke where someone had said that JW is the best AWPer in the world. I said he's not. Kenny S is the best AWPer in the world. JW just has the best CZ life insurance coverage because of the way you can use it to inhibit his flaws, whereas Kenny S doesn't need to even use that weapon and he can still be the best AWPer and dominate the whole game. So make it more expensive. Now here's the thing, you'll probably think yourself, we went 300 to 500, so where are we going, Thorin? Like $700, $800? No, I'm not even exaggerating here. I would make this gun cost over $1,000. I think a price point is probably $1,100 or $1,200. Now you might think that's crazy. No, because remember, to get the CZ with its current power and utility and where you can use it in whack with where the game should be in terms of balancing everything, you actually need it to be in the place. Because remember the scenarios I decided before where you could do a pistol buy, which is like a half save. Do a force buy, which is like I say, I'm not saving at all, I'm buying everything I can out, or a full save. Because those three have been muddied and some of them don't exist, like the full save almost never happens, and the force buy isn't happening that often, you're mainly just going to these CZ buys. Now, to fix that, we need to make it so that the CZ essentially isn't really even a pistol anymore. I mean, it fucking isn't anyway. It's like a machine gun that just has less bullets and it's in the pistol section, so it's stupid anyway. I would make it be more in whack with an SMG. So now this gun now needs to be in the position where when you buy it, it's a force buy to buy it. It's not a pistol, a slightly more expensive pistol buy, which is what they've made it. Has to be like a force buy. Since no one fucking buys the SMGs anyway, and now people aren't even buying like a Galil or whatever and that sort of shit. Instead, we're going to have to go to this world where that's where the CZ's going to have to be price pointed. So now at least when you buy it, yeah, it has all these factors where you still might get the kills. But now that if you don't, the rounds that you don't will still be enough to punish you and make it a gamble and make it strategy again as to how you use this weapon. That would be one for me. Another way to do it, less bullets in the gun. The problem with the less bullets in the gun one is, I don't think they'll do it because it'll mean that bad players at low levels will just never get kills with the gun, and then the fucking stats will drop and they'll be like, it isn't being used enough, even though pro players would still be able to wreck. The big problem there is, I think, if you think of the scenario that it's used in, because you're playing against world-class players with a rifle usually when you have the gun, if you don't get a kill in the first 4 bullets with the way it's used, you're probably not getting a kill anyway. You're probably getting killed. So I don't think that matters. And that whole, the reload time is long. Well, if you haven't been killed in the first 4 bullets, odds are you got away, in which case you probably got time to negotiate the reload and then have the bullets again. I don't think less bullets is really a good solution, believe it or not. Reduce the firing speed. I actually think reduce the firing speed is a good one, because then it wouldn't allow so much of the sort of bullshit that a pro player is telling me, just aim sort of there, and then it'll just go, oh, maybe you'll headshot there, maybe it'll just go up and just pre-fire and spam it around, and then just spam while you're moving backwards. It'll limit those a little bit, so that's not bad. Again, though, I get the sense they won't do that. My favourite one, after we've had my first 2 that I think are better, remove it entirely, make it more expensive. Another one, in terms of just affecting the gun itself, that I like, is make it so it's way less accurate when moving. Okay, if you have to stand still for like half a second, like with some of the guns we had in 1.6, like the Deagle, for example. Actually, the Deagle's a bad example, because you could strafe, sort of, if you strafe forwards and left or right. Like, people understood that. I would make it so that you have to sort of be stood still to do any sort of reasonable spray with the gun. Now, listen, if you just fire 1 bullet, fair enough, let him do that when he's sort of moving. If he's willing to just fire 1 bullet and let it go, it's not really what the gun's designed for, so I don't mind it if that's super accurate. But don't make it so that you can move and spray and have any reasonable sort of accuracy. Because if you do that, you're gonna take away a lot of the problems of JW and Smiths abusing it. You're gonna take away the problem of just being able to bum rush corners 50 people and do that. You're gonna take away the problem of people just buying instead of a proper weapon, or even using it to peek a corner in that way. You're going to take away a lot of these issues just by reducing that thing. So I think I've outlined a pretty solid argument there for why the CZ is overpowered. I think I've also given some viable solutions that can happen here. Listen, don't get your hopes up. Like, from my experience of Valve and other developers, by the way, odds are they won't fix it. They won't even balance on the pro level. They'll just balance based on the scrubs who play, and if they're not good with it, they're probably not because they're idiots. Then it's not a problem. And if they don't buy it because they don't understand it, then it's also probably not going to get fixed. So I wouldn't get your hopes up, but let's just play a hypothetical game that we could live in a world where it could be fixed and balanced, and it wouldn't have this spoiler effect on the game at the moment. Because one last thing I'll say is that the other side of the CZ being so powerful is that in an ideal world, those force buys, like I described, usually should be coming... No, the pistol buys, rather. The pistol ecos usually should be coming on T-side. It should be like on T-side you buy a couple of Deagles and you hope to get a kill and get that gun and work with it. The CZ is making the CT side too overpowered. Because of these scenarios I've described here, they're backing off and using it and still holding a position. The AWPing effect... These teams are already so good on CT side at the moment, it's just making that a little bit too OP. And I think also that if it had some nerfs in some areas or more expensive, it would open up the T side a little bit more. So, yeah, that's it. The CZ is bullshit. Thanks.